In this video, I'll show you how you can manage your GitHub organization with Terraform Cloud. I'll also talk about how you can structure your repos, how to use templates to scale out, as well as add some controls and guardrails to protect you from issues. So welcome back to the channel. I'm Sunny. So it's been a while since I've created a technical video, but this video has actually been on the cards for some time now. And I basically thought it would be a good video to show you how you can manage your GitHub organization using Terraform Code. That doubles as having it in code in a repo also means you have some controls around it as well. I'll also talk about how you can structure your repositories and I guess some pros and cons, as well as how you can use templates to scale out your deployments. And then we'll talk about Terraform Cloud and how you can actually set it up. So one of the reasons why I guess I wanted to do this as well was a few years ago, I had to come up with a solution on how we create repos for all of our customers. Keep in mind that at this point in time, I hadn't used Terraform and I didn't know what a pull request was. So I just wanted to, I guess, fast forward to the future and sort of look back and share with you the experience and thoughts that I have now based on what I did in the past and how I would probably do it moving forward. So in this video, I'm sort of trialing something as well because I'm all about improving efficiency and how I operate. And obviously, the longer I spend on making videos, I guess the less I want to do them. So I've got this little stream deck and I'm actually trying OBS. So hopefully this video goes well. It's actually the second time recording it because I had issues with my first demo, having a typo in my organization, which was breaking a lot of things. And I thought it was permissions, pat tokens. But OBS allows me to do things like this now. So now I can basically add overlays and switch screens. And yeah, so takes out all of the editing. So anyways, let's get into this. My other new thing as well, by the way, is I'm blogging things now. So then that doubles as some sort of structure and scripts. So let's just go over to the blog. So what I want to do is, I guess, go over a quick overview of an organization. Now, I'm not going to go into too much details and I'll leave my little recommendations there till probably the end. But obviously a GitHub organization is a logical construct of an organization, and obviously you can carve it out by department, teams, whatever you want, and then you can basically create repos and associate permissions to those teams. You can use things like code owners and branch protection to sort of prevent you from merging code without reviews and having peer reviews. But I'll talk about that a bit later. What I want to talk about, first of all, is repository structure. Now, this is probably an open debate. And a few years ago, when I had to make those decisions, it was very hard for me to understand what the differences were and maybe what the long-term implications were when you scale out. Probably looking back now, I'll probably change a couple of things. But let's just talk about the two different scenarios. And I'll talk about branch protection, code owners and things just after this. But right now, we'll just talk about the multiple options. So when you're structuring out your repos, there's multiple ways that you can set it up. So the first one is to create separate repos, which can be per asset, per application, per customer. By doing that, gives you multiple ways on how you can structure your code and everything inside. So inside your repo, you could structure it by folders, which we currently have folders, and then we have Terraform workspaces associated to them. So when you execute within those folders, you can basically auto apply things. And then the other option is branches. Now, branches is not something that I commonly use, but branches I feel is probably a more effective way of avoiding duplication of code. So they're the two ways, but let's talk about pros and cons by having a separate repo. So obviously one pro is you can completely segment access permissions because permissions are generally set at the repository level. And then another thing is branch protection rules. So branch protection rules, I'll talk about probably a bit later, but allows you to basically add another layer of protection, which can include validation as well as peer reviews and a whole bunch of other things. And then basically another thing is obviously you have complete control of what potentially happens inside your repository without affecting other customers, other applications. So, it sort of mitigates your blast radius and issues. And you can obviously use code owners. So code owners, I'll talk a bit later. That basically ties into branch protection rules as well. And then the cons are obviously you have multiple touch points. So if you ever work with repos, let's say you have 10 customers. You can imagine if you had to make a change to each repo, it can get a bit complicated to do that at scale because you potentially have to clone each one, raise pull requests, or just merge into master if you're using some sort of automation. But it gets a bit tedious, I guess. So it's really a give and take, I guess, depending on if you really need to segment permissions and things like that. And then obviously, you potentially have to manage a lot more integrations per repository because you can set up notifications, webhooks, and other things. But let's move over to the other side. So you can potentially also go the other way and set up one single repository and then potentially break down customers inside that with folders and then subfolders of environments or whatever you want. Or you could use branches, but branches I think could get a bit too hardcore for me anyway. So visually, if they're in a folder, you can just see them and eyeball them. Now, this has also got its pros and cons, so there's no real correct way to do this. Just making sure I'm recording. And so obviously a pro is you can make bulk changes at scale. So because you can do that with one pull request or one merge, I guess, which can also, well, we won't talk about cons. Let's just skip ahead. So then obviously you can have custom code owners just like before because you can direct it to folders and files and things like that. But obviously the cons are you cannot segment the permissions because that's generally set at a repository level. So you can set different types of permissions, but it would be challenging to assign two customers the same access to one repo. Obviously, you can control it through branch protection rules and peer review, but still at the end of the day, it will increase risk. But so it comes down to how many people are going to touch that repo, and that probably is one of the deciding factors. If you have one team that controls it all, it's probably not a major thing because the same team are operating in there. But if you start having other customers or teams that are sort of operating in there, it can get a bit messy and hard to manage. Branch protection rules. So I've got limited by single branch protection rules. Now, if you're using branches, that would not be the case. But if you're using folders, then that would be the case because you'd be protecting the single branch, which would be potentially master. And then the other one is obviously blast radius. So I can create, someone could go through and do a find replace, make a mistake, push that into a pull request, and then can get accidentally merged and change a few other things that were unexpected. And then the other problem is limitations on integrations. I believe this is a thing. I'm no GitHub expert, but I'm pretty sure integrations are set up at the repository level as well. So customization will get a bit more challenging if you ever need to send notifications or webhooks to different sources or targets. So that's just something to think about, I guess. And what I was going to mention, I was going to loop back around, was if I was to look back now, so the way that I originally set it up for our customers, I don't know what that was, sorry. That was kind of like a light bulb moment. So the customers were by repo, and then environments were based on folders, and then they had VCS-backed Terraform workspaces, so every folder would execute code. Now, looking back, there's probably a couple of things I would do, is use our own local modules. So then that way we had more control and we could simplify the modules and have less dependencies. Right now we're using the standard sort of gallery modules that were created internally, but then there's a lot of layer of complication because there's a lot of dependencies inside them. So I'd probably create local modules, host them in GitHub, and then have more control around them. So that way we can uplift modules at scale, but probably make them less complicated. Now, when modules were created, when we started using Terraform, obviously everyone was still learning, so there was a lot of lessons learnt, and yeah, but some of those things are still in today, and things can get a bit challenging when you have too many modules. And then the other number 2 would be, I would switch over the folders to branches, and that would avoid code drift. So right now in folders, you've kind of got 3 different versions of code, as where if you had branches, you could obviously rebase from master. Obviously, you'd have to make some adjustments in the code. When we started, we didn't really know much about Terraform, but looking at it now, probably try and wrap it around branches, and then have inside those branches potentially more environment type variables that you can just modify. So then a single file would just run off that and then consume a base, which is from master. And the other thing is using orchestration to generate code, because then that takes out human error. So I wrote some PowerShell scripts and basically used Azure DevOps to go read tags from resource groups and VMs and pull them in. And then I basically have a script that will actually write Terraform code around alerts and then go deploy it. So then every time it ran, it would dynamically generate the same code and then push it in. Or actually, no, it would actually do the actual apply. So there's actually no code being stored, which is probably good and bad, because ideally you want to still have a reference on the configuration. So thinking back now, what I'd probably do is merge a copy into a repo. So then there's a point in time on configuration. So let's loop back now to what I mentioned before about branch protection and things like that. So these are some simple guidelines and controls that everyone should probably look at and consider when they're trying to use the GitHub organization and repositories across a larger team or multiple teams. I'll basically flick through the web interface to show you shortly what it looks like, kind of. But the key things that you should have is obviously, besides permissions and things like that, is branch protection rules. So let me flick over to one of these. I think I've got an example repo here. So I've got an example repo, and I don't think I have settings. Yeah, I don't have permissions. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't have permissions to the repo, so I can't show you the branch protection rules. There's normally a settings here. Now, that's awesome. Yeah, okay, I don't have any access, so I'll have to show that after. So let's just go back to the docker. So branch protection rules basically allow you to set certain code review requirements, I guess, and then you can basically assign it to a code owners. So I'll talk about code owners shortly. But basically you can mark it as how many peer reviews. You can have a criteria of a validation being successful as well. So you can have validations where I'll show you what Terraform Cloud can do. It has a speculative plan. So you can actually say if that plan fails, don't allow it to merge. So there's things like that. So branch protection rules, I'll show you later what they look like. Code owners is pretty much just a file that you can assign ownership of a file, folder, file types, and then as a result with the branch protection rules, if you assign a code owners to say a folder, that code owner needs to have an approval on that pull request for it to work. And then the next thing is pull request templates. So I'll also show you that later. But pull request templates are basically like checklists that you can basically have a template on every repo. And then when a pull request is created, that template will appear. And it kind of is like, a checklist where people have to sort of put hand in heart saying, I've done this and that, and I'm not going to break anything pretty much. So it's kind of like, allowing people to sign their life away before they're going to commit this pull request pretty much. So yeah, I'll show you a bit later. And obviously I've got GitHub Teams. I just added that because, obviously with anything you do, you should probably use teams, not individual people, because then that, if you're assigning it to people and those people leave, then it gets hard to manage. If you're assigning it to a team, then it's easier. But teams should always be used just to have complete segmentation of people's duties and their responsibilities. Yeah. So basically, I'll show you that later because I don't have access at the moment, and hopefully I can fix that with a demo. And another thing is repository templates. So repository templates is pretty much where you can create a repository. That repository can contain certain files inside it, such as CODEOWNERS file, the pull request templates, issue templates, and things like that. And when you basically create a new repo, you can use this template where pretty much you'll create that repo with those pre-configured files. So I think I can show you that at least. No, I've destroyed that too. So anyways, I think the example repo might have it though. Yeah, so this is pretty much what it'll look like. And then if you look at .github, so I like to store things in .github, but pretty much these files I think can be nearly anywhere in a repository. But .github, fast forwarding to the future, I believe GitHub Actions actually operates out of here under workflows. So, just having a standard, I'm just probably got a bit of OCD where having files out of sight is better, especially for configuration and management type files from the actual root of the repository. But if you look in here, CODEOWNERS is something very straightforward. Obviously it's erroring out because I don't have these teams. So that's basically saying everything in this repo, so a wildcard, this organization / team will be the owner, as well as I've just got it one of my personal usernames. And then you can look at this template. So this is what the template will pretty much look like. And when I submit a pull request, it will basically have this checklist where I got to sign my life away saying, yep, I've done all this. So let's flick back to this. So what we're going to do in this demo is we're going to show you how to configure this in Terraform and then configure Terraform Cloud. So basically this is a very high level overview or workflow of how it's going to work. So pretty much we'll have a repository. We'll basically create, we'll clone it, create a pull request, update some code, get it approved. Once it's approved, we'll merge it and Terraform will just apply it, and then the GitHub changes will happen. So to get started, you need to basically have a Terraform Cloud account. So you can just go to terraform.io and just sign up. So I'm using a free account right now. You need a GitHub organization as well. So you can do that for free as well. You'll see in my demo, I've got someone else's cloud account and I've got my personal account. So I can play with, I guess, 2 people only. You can integrate, I think, GitHub organization with AD or Azure AD, I believe, but you got to get an enterprise license, and I ain't going to do that. So my demo will just be a couple of users, and then you need a GitHub personal access token as well. So we'll walk through how you do all that. I've got it documented here on how you do it, but what I'll do is I will show you how we do this. So actually, this is how to create a repo. So I'm not going to show you that because I've already created a repo here. So this will be my manage-GitHub demo repo. So I've got nothing inside it yet. And if we just flick over to this. So what we're going to do first is once we've created the repo, we're going to go to Terraform Cloud. And then in Terraform Cloud, we will set up a VCS provider. And the VCS provider is what will look up your repositories every time and set up a GitHub actions, a GitHub app to basically have a webhook into your GitHub repo. So when things get merged to master, it will be notified and then it will basically execute code. So I'm not really going to talk much about Terraform Cloud in itself. So I assume you're familiar with Terraform and you're familiar with, some things on how Terraform workspaces work. Terraform Cloud is pretty much like Terraform Enterprise in the cloud, which is a SaaS or PaaS service, or SaaS service, whichever we call it, provided by HashiCorp. So it just allows you to basically interface with it just like Terraform Enterprise. So if we have a look at this, so what we're going to do is we're going to set up the VCS provider first. So this is pretty much what an organization looks like. So I'm already logged in. So keep in mind that I've already set up all my logins. So hopefully everything I use would be already logged in. So I'm really going to show you how to do that. But if you basically go to settings, we're going to set up a provider. And then we're going to add a VCS provider. So what we're going to do is we're going to use github.com. And basically all you need to do is click on this register new OAuth and make sure you're logged into GitHub as the user that you want. And pretty much you just copy all these, which is pretty straightforward.
One eternity later.
Okay, so I'm back again. So I basically had to start again because I was logged in with the wrong account in my GitHub org, and I needed to be basically owner. I was logged in with someone else's cloud account. So we're going to go through and add this VCS provider again. So let's basically click on this, and we basically just copy this information. Super easy. So we're just going to leave that blank this time, the description that is. So I've just created this. So we grab the client ID, we go back to this screen, add the client ID, and we'll just call this someone else's GitHub. And then we go back to this, generate a new client secret. So if you're not dealt with secrets or tokens, they generally appear once because they're plain text strings, so they're not that secure. So just make sure that you don't move away from this screen before copying it here. So then we'll continue and it should pop up. So now what we need to do is grant access to the organization and then authorize it. And then that's pretty much done. So if I refresh this screen, you'll see you can't see that, and there's no button to say show secret. Okay, so we don't need to do this. So if I just click on providers, I'll now have a provider set up. So that's been done. So if we go back to the documentation, skip ahead. Okay, so what we're going to do now is create a new Terraform workspace. So workspace is obviously where your code will be maintained and executed. So we're basically just going to create a new workspace. So there's different options here. Not really going to talk about these, but we're obviously going to use the version control workflow, which will basically automatically apply code that's merged into master on the repo. Obviously, you need to mark auto apply, but I'll show you that too. So I've got my VCS provider already here. Just click on it. And then I want this manage GitHub demo. And click on advanced options. So what I'm going to do is do auto apply. So obviously when there's a change to the master branch, it will just apply it. Basically you'll have branch protection rules. So then that way the branch protection rules will pretty much have peer review and things like that. And you can set 2 or 3 approvals if you want before merging this, as it's going to change your organization. And then I'm just going to set this to master, even though default branch is master. And now this is a handy one, which is automatic speculative plans. I don't know why I couldn't pronounce that. So basically it's like when you do a local plan against your code, and it'll show you what it's going to do. As soon as you basically create a pull request, it'll basically show a speculative plan against your pull requests, and I'll show you what that looks like. So if we just create this repo, so create this workspace, and hopefully this works. So I've basically just created that. So we're going to go to the overview. This is pretty much what a Terraform Cloud or Terraform Enterprise interface looks like. So you have your overview here, your runs. So you'll see, I'll show you the runs later. It'll basically show you states, variables, and then there's a whole bunch of settings. But what we need to do is next, I believe we need to create a PAT token, a personal access token for GitHub, which is how the GitHub Terraform provider will authenticate. So I'll show you that in code later. So what we need to do is we go back to our account, we go to settings, and then we go to developer settings and personal access tokens. So we're going to generate a new token. So we'll just call this manage GitHub demo. And so I'm going to set expiration to 7 days. Now, I'm just doing it for the demo. So ideally, you don't want it to expire because it's going to be used to manage your GitHub organization. If you do this out there and you have a way to rotate secrets automagically, let me know, because I don't really have to do it at work at the moment, but I am curious, but I've never really looked at it. But I'm going to set it 7 days for the demo. So we basically need this repo permission, and we'll need admin org, and then delete repo. Now, delete repo is optional because I don't know if you want to delete repos, considering it could have some configuration that you might want to keep or use. So you might want to have stage gates around that, and someone has to manually delete them if you want. But I'm just going to add it for the sake of this demo. And again, personal access token will disappear. So let's go to our variables. So what we need to do is create a GitHub token, or GitHub underscore token variable. We're going to add that pat token, and then we're going to mark it as sensitive so it can never be seen again. And we're just going to save it. So we're going to use GitHub underscore token in our code, and then it'll pass it through into our provider. So that's pretty much it. And then, so we've got our foundational pieces set up, and I've basically got a very colorful picture here. I basically just wanted to show you from a visual point of view on how we're going to structure these files. So these are pretty much the files I'll create. So backend is going to be where you tie in your code with a remote workspace, which is going to be Terraform Cloud. And then providers is obviously going to call the GitHub provider, as well as it's going to consume that token to configure the provider as well. And then the variable is going to call that workspace variable so it can be consumed through our code. And then I've just broken down to admins, which is going to be just a file that will have organizational admin configuration, just making sure I'm still recording. And then a contributors.tf, which will create a GitHub team called contributors, and then a code owners team as well. And obviously, if you've got multiple teams, I'm just showing you for one sort of team at the moment. So it's up to you on how you want to scale out these different patterns. So I'm just showing you how you can do it from a demo point of view. Obviously, you can get more complicated with more teams. And I've got basically 2 files, which is templates.tf. So I'm going to store the templates for the code owners as well as the pull request templates in the same repo. So the code will actually create the repo template, so then I can actually keep it up to date from this repo. And then I've got the repositories.tf, which will actually create repositories based on that template repo, as well as create branch protection rules. And I think I added where it's going to set the master branch as the default branch, because by default the organization is set to main, and I just decided to leave the default as main for now. But then the code will set it to master, and then you'll create a production test and development branch as well. So let's flick over to VS Code now. So I've already got this code written out. Now I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to do this. So I've got a demo folder here. So let's go into this demo folder. So I've already got everything set up, like authentication wise. So I should be able to work. Last time I didn't set up my authentication for GitHub, because this is actually my personal GitHub, which I don't use, but I didn't want to convert someone else's cloud one to an organization. So let's go find this repo. Forgot to flick over. So I've gone back to this repo, and then I'm going to flick back over to this one, and now I'm going to clone it. But let me make sure. Yeah. So if I clone this, okay, that's a good sign. It worked for once. And so what we're going to do is we need to configure the, let me remove this. So we need to configure the backend provider. So I've already got files here. So I'm just going to copy it and then walk through it. So what we've got here is this is where you basically point your remote state to Terraform Cloud. So basically that's where you point it to, and that's my Terraform Cloud organization. But I need to change this, which is going to be, the workspace is called manage GitHub -demo. And then the next thing we need to do is let's create a variables. So the variables is going to consume that GitHub token that I mentioned on the workspace. So if you go look at this, not this one, this one. So it's going to call this pat token to authenticate the GitHub provider. So if we go back to this, so if we just go through to providers, so we're going to create a providers. So I've already copied this, and if we go back to Chrome, you can see under the documentation, the GitHub provider, and it shows you pretty much the things that you need to consume or configure the actual provider. And it shows you down here about, how you can authenticate, and there's different ways that you can do it. But we're going to keep it as the pat token for now. And this is where I had a typo last time, which killed my entire demo because I kept getting 404 repo not found because my organization was completely wrong. So this should be right now. So pretty much this will basically configure the provider against this GitHub organization. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to create a template folder. So if I just copy this template folder into here. So this template folder is going to be in a .github folder. And then we've got this code owners file. So these code owner files are pretty static, right? So what happens is if you create repos with these files, it does get a bit hard to manage when you need to update the code owners or you need to update these templates. So keep that in mind as well. I basically wrote a script that would actually clone repos and then merge straight into master, but it would only update these files. There's I don't know how other people do it. So if you have a way of centrally managing these template files that will push out to everything else, let me know. I'm not really haven't really done things like with Ansible and things like that I think allow you to manage configuration. So if you got ways out there, let me know. But I haven't really heard of many other ways of doing it. That's going to be our template base, and then I've got this template file here. I've already got them here. So obviously I've got test code. So I don't want to go through and write all this code again. So that's why I'm really just going to walk through it quickly. So this is basically our code to create the template repo in itself, which will actually consume those files that I have here. So then that way, if I ever need to update these files, I just update it here. Then it will go update it inside the repo. But obviously, this is only a point in time, so it'd only be new repos created after you make your changes. So if you look here, I'm just creating a GitHub repository here. So that's, if we go back here. So this is the base config here that you'd use. And then if we go back to VSCode, so I've basically just marked it as a template. So that's the key. You mark it as a template. So I'll show you. I'll show you what that sort of looks like once you've done it. I'm going to create a new branch, which would be the master branch. I think I can actually do this instead. Oh, someone's dying out there. So I believe you can just create the default branch as master and it will just change it and override it. So you don't actually need to create that branch. Just by setting it as a default branch, it will create it, I believe. And then you can see here what I'm going to do is put some files, which is going to be in that template.github and then that MD file, which will just be put into the repo like that. And then same with code owners. So I think that is enough for me to hopefully push just this part. So I want to stage this just so you can see what it looks like. So if I just do an init, I'm not in the repo, in the directory. So we're just going to do an init to initialize our local workspace here. And I'm just going to run a validate just to make sure my code is okay. And I'm pretty much going to just push it in. Obviously, I'm not creating pull requests on this repo, so I don't really have it set up with branch protection because I'm not going to go through peer review to do that. But actually, I need to update this git ignore. I don't know why this lock file is always ignored. So if I just go git ignore, we'll just add it here. What time is it? Got to start work soon. Notifications are starting to go off. Let's commit all this. So we're just going to say initial template repo. So we're just going to commit it and we're going to merge it in. Let's just do that. Hopefully that has worked. Let's go back to the browser. And if we go look at this, hopefully this has worked. I don't know. Just keeping an eye on it. Let's go back to this. Should be committed. And it should run. Let's just go look at VCS controls. Yep, it's there. And it should auto apply. But it hasn't. And now, I don't know if this is a thing about the initial run, but I'm pretty sure it should just run. But what we're going to do is we're just going to start a new run and see what it does. And hopefully it will execute the code in there. It's theoretically what it should do if I have it set up right. Okay, so let's see my code now. So this is a new interface. Just going to check some notifications. Okay, so hopefully I'll get no errors. And yeah, this is the new interface. I kind of like the old school black screen one, but that's done. So now if I go to my organization, I should have this new repo. So you can see repo template is here now. So it has my files in here. And you can see there's actually a use this template. So if I click on that, it'll basically say, hey, what do you want to call the new repo and everything else. So that's one part of it done. Let's go back to, let's leave it on here and we'll go back to runs so you can see. And what we'll do is go back to VSCode. So what we're going to do now is we'll just set up everything else. So I've got all my code here. So I'm just going to walk through it. I'm going to put this code, I'll white label this code or generify it. And then basically put it into GitHub. So if you want to basically play with it, you can pull it down. You can set up your own org. It's pretty easy to do. And so I'm just going to copy all these files. So these are the files left. And then I'll just walk through it. So admins. So I've got admins here now. I'm already an admin, but I'm going to add it here because then that way it's in code. So if anyone kicks me out and this Terraform Workspace re-executes, I'm back into the game. So you can see here what this will do is add a GitHub membership called admins. So that's just the resource name. But GitHub membership is membership to the organization. And you can either add member or admin as the role. I don't know if there's other ones, but I just know about those two. So this is going to be an admin, as where my other team member would just be a member. And then I'm going to do a data lookup on this repo itself, just because I'm not creating the manage demo repo. So I need to do a data lookup, so then I can apply permissions to it. So then that way permissions and code owners and things like that will work. Saying that, I should actually also put this .github in the root folder of this repo, so then the code owners and pull request templates will appear. But I'm not creating any branch protection rules on this repo, just for demo purposes. So that's the admin config. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a code owners team, and then we're going to apply the code owners team permissions to all the repositories we'll create in this repo, or from this repo. So I've only got one user. It's going to be my someone else's cloud one. And then we're going to create a new code owners team. And then what we're going to do is add my user to a member of the organization, because you need to be a member of the org before you can be added to teams. And then we're going to basically create team members. So we're going to add the user to the team, which is using this locals map up here. So you just add GitHub usernames up here. And then it'll basically loop through each one of those users and then add them as a member here to the team that's getting created up here, which is this GitHub team CODEOWNERS.id. And then what we're going to do is also apply permissions. Now, I had to add a depends on because as you use Terraform, if you create things, it shotguns everything. If there's no inferred dependency on them, because I'm using a locals map, it means Terraform does not know about that map and the resources it's actually creating. As where you can see here, I'm using GitHub team CODEOWNERS.id, which is by automatically doing that, Terraform will actually wait until that team is created before you'll apply permissions. But because I'm using this local reference as well, it won't check if the users are members or anything yet, because there's no action to actually correlate this resource to this resource, but it will wait for the team creation. So I've added a depends on the repositories because it can't apply permissions to the repo unless the repo is created. So let's now flick over to contributors. So this is the same. I've gone and done the same thing because I only have one user. So they're going to be a member of CodeOwners and the contributors. And note when you're playing with CodeOwners and team membership, if you have a CodeOwners file set up and that team is not showing as a code owner for review, it potentially means that team doesn't have access to the repository. So if you're ever missing that, make sure that the team has permissions to the repository. You know, when you have hundreds of repositories, it starts to get a bit funky and you may forget that simple thing. And then the other thing is the repositories one. So I'm going to create, I've got another locals map here. So that way you just add an entry to that repo. You can obviously add descriptions too by just putting comments in here. So repo 1 example. And what we're going to do is loop through that. Now what I'm going to do is use a count. So I decided to use a count against the repositories, which will basically count through those objects and then create them as sort of a numbered list, I think. So then that way, when I go and create the repository, I can index them. So then that way, if I ever need to call upon other references, which is like down here, I can call the ID as well, and it will basically iterate through. And you'll see what that looks like when it's creating it in the actual Terraform apply. It will show that. So what we're going to do is we created a new repo based on all these maps, or this map, I mean. And then once it does that, it's going to basically create the repo based on that template repo that we created. And then what we're going to do is create a branch protection rule, which is against the master branch. And because I'm directly calling this repository, it knows that they're linked. So it will actually wait for that process, hopefully to finish before it goes and creates a branch protection rule, because obviously it can't do that without it existing. And then I've got enforce admins. So just for the sake of that, I am probably going to take that out. Enforce admins means when you have a branch protection rule that says you need to have code review and everything else, an admin needs to play by the rules too. But I've just removed that so I don't have to play by the rules purely for this demo. So I don't have to, make sure there's one approval for my peer review pull request. And then I've got review count, which is just 1. So this is really the heart of it. There's a whole bunch of other things, but I'm just simplifying this. It just means there needs to be a minimum of 1 review, but obviously I've turned off the admins part so I can bypass it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a multiple branches here. So development branch and the source is master. And then we're going to create a test and then a production branch. And I believe these will obviously just execute once, and once it's in state, it's not going to destroy branches or anything. It's just a create. And then we're going to set the default branch as master. So let's go check this in and see what happens. So we're going to create teams and repos. I should just push commit, be lazy, just for the demo. So, and then we're going to sync the changes. Oop. So now if we flick back over, hopefully this should automatically run. And then I'll show you other things with speculative plans and things. But you can see here it's already queued. So because I merged straight into master, but obviously I'll show you the pull request with the branch protection stuff. But this will basically, so you can see here the indexes are being applied. So then the indexes, having it that way allows you to call other objects inside it, which is super handy if you need to consume the attributes across other resources. So yeah, it's going to basically create all these teams and then apply permissions across all the repos. And yeah, this is pretty much it. So I'll just, we'll let this run and then I'll come back to it. Actually, you can see that the sequencing of the execution is actually working where it knows it's inferring the dependencies on resources. So you can see the ones up here are not running. So creating branches are not running until the repos are created. So that means it's actually working. Because normally, if you don't code it that way, and I reference the locals map, it'll just create the objects and not know that they're related. But if you somehow tie them together like the way I have, you don't have to put all the depends on everywhere. So just let me go. Okay, so that's been done. So let's go over to our GitHub organization now. So if we just switch over, you should be able to see all the repos. So all the repos are here now. So what we're going to do is, as we walk through it, let's try and clone one. So you can see here, this repo has everything we want. And if you look at settings, you'll see there's a branch protection rule. So it's against master. If we edit this, you can see that we've got require approvals and it's one approver and just some other config, which is, but this code owners one is important. And then the one I disabled was include administrators. So I just did that just for the demo. I also have done that before for service accounts. Oh, sorry. I didn't mention this before, but obviously the PAT token should not be your own account. It should be a service account because you don't want to have a dependency with some sort of automation in your own account. It's just, a best practice, I guess, but you don't want to be accountable for breaking some sort of automation. But yeah, you shouldn't be doing that. But anyways, I've done it under my account purely for demo purposes. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go and clone this repo. So let's go back to VSCode for a sec. Let's just get out of here. Let's just go and clone this repo. And we're just going to do a git checkout -b. We're just going to say test pull request. Whoops, I always forget. Got to go into the repo. And then we're going to, so we've got a branch now. So what we're going to do is just, do a quick test. So this is a test pull request. Cool. We're just going to save that. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to say test pull request. Just want to show you what it looks like with the templates and the branch protection stuff. And we're just going to publish this. So this is pretty much the process of a pull request. So if we go back here, you can see I've got a create pull request. So it's created. So I've already put in my commit message there, and you can see the template has appeared. So if I just go create pull request, you can see here there's a whole bunch of things. And if I just tick them, right, and then you'll see it should have, So under reviewers, it should have the code owners, but just let me check my file here. Yeah, so I got typos here as well. Excellent. So let's quickly modify this in master. So I'm pretty sure my GitHub org, I'm missing the second E. I got someone else's without the two E's inside. So we're just going to edit this, I believe. Yeah. So that shows you why that pull request didn't have the code owner's approval, because my teams didn't have the access, right? So hopefully that works now. It still says it contains errors. I don't know why. Let's try and refresh it. Oh, it's just the second half. Yep, because I'm an admin, I think. But anyways, hopefully that works now. But I think the pull request will not show the update. I think. Let's have a quick look. Yep, so no reviewers. So let's just close this pull request. And let's delete the branch. Let's just do it again. So let's go git. Okay. So that looks good. You can see reviewers, got my code owners now. So pretty much, basically, you can see, so this is a little trick that I learnt. Didn't know this existed, but if you go to the file, there's a little security lock here, and that actually shows you who the owners of the file is. Super handy to know, but as you can see, I've only got one team because my other user doesn't exist, I think. So yeah, so that's pretty much what the pull requests look like. This is basically the template that I created that gets pushed to every repo when they get created. And then this is what a pull request, you can see it's a pending or reviewer from a code owner. So that's the example I wanted to show you. The other thing I wanted to show you was probably this speculative plan. So let's just go to this manage demo. Let's go back to VSCode. Let's go to manage. So what we're going to do is, I'm ready in master, but I just got a habit of doing that. Make sure I got all the updates. We'll just create a quick branch. So we'll just go pull request test. Then what we'll do is, let's just make a change to something. Maybe we'll add a new repo. So let's go and add a new repo quickly. Repos. So what we're going to do is add Azure new repo. And that should be it. So that will basically create a whole new repo with all the rules. But I just want to show you what the speculative plan will look like. New repo. Ooh. Okay. Hello, so editing Sunny here. So I just realized that this whole scene that I'm trying to show you with the speculative plans, as well as some other configuration of the branch protection rules, is not being shown on screen. So I'm here again, and I'm going to start showing this part again. Create the pull request. And this one should have a speculative plan with Terraform, hopefully. And you can see here, so it's already running. So if I click on details, they'll actually take me to Terraform Cloud, and it'll show you what the plan is going to look like. And like I said, I believe you can set it up. I don't know if you can just easily do it from here, but under branch protection rules, I think you can, no. Yeah, that should be it. Okay, so no branch protection rules on this, but let's just go master, require pull request, 1, dismiss. There is, I think here, these status checks before merging. I think I can add it here if it just, yeah. So I'm pretty sure by adding that check will actually allow me to make sure that they're successful before you can actually merge a pull request. But if we go back to the pull request, see how there's a tick on it now. You can see that all checks have passed. So it shows you here, and then you click on details, it'll take you to this. But yeah, so I'm not really going to go any further with this, but that I just wanted to show you that speculative plan, but we'll merge it anyway. But that should automatically execute as mentioned. Obviously, I'm an admin, so I can bypass the branch protection rules just for this demo. And that's pretty much all I wanted to show you. So let's go back to this. So basically, that's pretty much how you can set up Terraform and manage your GitHub organization. As you can see, it's pretty good from a point of view where you can have standards and frameworks and have guardrails and everything just being in code. So then it prevents people from making alterations or deviating from the standard, and it all becomes managed through code. So that's pretty much it. So, this video I think is quite a long video, so I'm going to basically end it now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and a like, follow, whatever it is. And I'm going to sign out. Stay tuned for my next videos, probably GitHub Actions. But yeah, stay tuned. I'm signing out because I'm rushing this now. Catch you later. See ya.
That's one small step for... Touchdown!